Aquarius. The air would be like if your season was a summer season. It's a little thick, condensed, but for some reason I can't hold back and I still want to work. Because when you really love what you do, you know that in all aspects of what you create, or what you love, what you create more than ever, you can't stop, right? And I think what I'm realizing throughout the readings is I'm finding how Aquarius's influence on Saturn is weaving its way through with each sign slowly but surely wanting to express their own uniqueness, and that's just generalizing you, I understand that, but for a sign who is way more comfortable normally, not all of you, but normally in the back, bird's eye view is normally what I call it, and kind of witnessing, yet at the same time doing such a big part of how the structure continues to evolve and run and evolve. Same thing, just said it in a different way, or backwards, or you know. The thing is though, is that you may not see yourself as the star of the show, even though your card is the star card. The truth is like that's a big part of the show, and in that aspect of the show, you are the star. You understand more than anyone how to do that when you're giving yourself the chance. Though it can disrupt your nervous system sometimes, because the anxiety or the anxious feeling, it could be from a plethora of things, but it could be stem from fear. It could stem from understanding and like evolution and really seeing your psychicness come to life. That's why I'm doing this in the shade right now. Like the sun is very bright, very much in Gemini, and I think as a fellow air sign, the influence that you're having is coming through stronger this season because it is a fellow air sign. And something interesting I learned, I don't know why I'm saying this, but something interesting I learned when I was younger is that you actually sweat less when you keep your hair down if you have long hair. And I just feel like if you don't know that, you might want to know that. I feel like a lot of Aquariuses always have very nice hair. So here's the thing. The cards are finally coming out for you in this season. You find yourself very easily feeling more independent about the way that you go about things, how you also are seeing and recognizing the influence that you can have too, in the way that you feel most comfortable. But you have to remember that with that will come uncomfortable times eventually, right? Once you're more noticed, a lot of cards fell out. So noticed in a certain way, maybe by more people, and that's not saying you haven't been noticed before. But you're evolving out of some kind of rut or feeling like you're stuck in a certain way, maybe physically behind walls, physically, because we have the Two of Swords here too, and then the Seven of Swords. Yeah, there's something heavy or something big or major that you've been moving through, or a combination of those things, they were brought up especially, in the Scorpio eclipse recently. A lot of people had that happen, that you're not the only one, you're not alone. Most people have been really confused and not understanding maybe why they're feeling a certain way. And I think you more than anyone can relate to that, because you have such premonitional feelings sometimes that you don't understand that's a strength, but also it's not, we haven't really learned to nurture it on a large level. So you have to do it in a sense on your own, even though it's talked about a lot. And there are ways to cope with anxiety. When you're someone who experiences something to its height, you understand that everything around you is also an influence on that. The reason why I bring up anxiety is because you're the sign that I find that has it most strongly. Even though right now, a lot of people have a heightened sense of that. And I think the beauty about the hard yet beautiful thing about what you're able to do is experience it to its height with the collective and make it such a human experience, and understand that that has its own power to it, and just as it is to be up front and center, like your dual sign Leo. What you may also realize is that through all of this, you actually have a lot more power. A huge thing that came to me before is that I didn't start maybe experiencing my power until I learned to really speak up for myself time and time again. It doesn't have to be, as you know, in a temperamental way. It can be done with concise boundaries around it. And I think that you're willing to work for what works for you, meaning you don't mind having the finer things in life, but you're very much, not all of you, but there's a sense of you, even the ones of you that are like showy to an extent, or if you like things that are very superficial, superfluous, like it doesn't have to be a bad thing, it's just something that you like. Even if you're one of those kinds of Aquarian, you still are someone who wants to continue to grow and learn and stay grounded and smart and intelligent, and you realize that you've kind of been maybe taken advantage of. Maybe at the same time, we always have to remember that you're allowing that to a certain extent if you don't set up a boundary. And this may hurt you. Something may hurt you just as well as something is going to be really good for you. Something that brings you money and something to work towards or work for. I'm not saying you have to work really hard, but something to work for. And what that may bring you to experience from the eclipse and the rollout of it is this sense of renewed and restructured creativity, something that you haven't felt in a long time. It's a big break from, even though there has been a lot going on with your sign on and off, especially in the longevity of things, what we can tend to experience when your sign, even though if you're watching this, if you're Aquarius, sun, moon, or rising, it could be for any of them. But I'd say I'd speak to the sun sign more because that's the sign that you're really learning about the most, I feel. And that's kind of how I read, so that's just a little information. And then in the second part, we take a look at the cards, which will be in a Patreon link below. So what you're learning to do, which is, even though it's done in this day and age, it's still not the norm. And where you're making normal, which is hard, is something that you're very into, very passionate about, can really work hard about, learn a lot about, bring other people's awareness to these things and create community out of this, knowing that you can't work alone, but it has your underlying power. It has what you would call just like raw talent, raw skill. So whether it's a skill or a talent or bringing a community together or doing something of that nature where other people will be involved, what you're learning, what you maybe have been experiencing as of late, is that through the slow movement of this transit may be aspecting you in some type of way. I am going through my Saturn return, so I have the placement there, and I can understand to an extent. But you're feeling it in a much, I find, maybe it just feels bigger, and I'm feeling small aspects of it, but it's controlling the next few years of my life. And for those of you who understand what you like being in control, but at the same time it's asking you to work at your best as you can. I'm not saying that you can't have any off days or days where you fuck up or where you need rest or where you need a vacation or where you are sick. It's more like when you're not on those days, you're still on. And what it seems like you're going through is this really deep upheaval, because through, again, going back and tying it back to through the long term transits, you experience all of it. You experience the change, the full change that it goes through. It's not just like, okay, change and done. Like an eclipse feels so much shorter than a longer transit in this. And yes, they do different things, but at the same time, it's still some type of change and transformation every year, but it's only through certain signs for about a year period. It's 6 months to 6 months that we see the different parts of those specific signs in the moon go through this huge change, in which you can understand and appreciate maybe more than ever the long term and what it takes to build something long term. You're seeing kind of, and for some of you who are more on the very intuitive psychic end, who I feel like if you're drawn to this channel, you most likely are, you're also like literally seeing visions. Like you're seeing a vision of where life can go and where your life can go, specifically amongst the many different ways that life in our world can go. And something about you is that when you decide, you really take a look at the broad spectrum of things and find where your unique place is. And so this is making you maybe even grieve what the future has yet to come, because you know that by becoming and really honoring this part of you, you're going to sacrifice what used to be good for you. And eventually you may not even find it like enticing, especially if it's something you're overcoming. But if it's just the fear of letting go of who you used to be, as a fixed sign, that can be sometimes difficult, even though Scorpio is a fixed transformational sign. You just know that it's like something that's going to seep into your life and really take, like I called it so many, it's crazy that so many signs coming up just verbally when there's nothing really out here except for Virgo. But it is Gemini season, so maybe you're finding yourself in one-on-one interactions with many different people that actually are very important to you, and that you are in maybe direct connection with just the right people, because you might need to hear something specifically from someone in order to continue what's going on here, because you may see from Four of Swords to Seven of Swords is that what was hidden to you no longer becomes hidden to you in the very near future, and that very thing drives you to acknowledge that you may have been putting your raw energy into something that was never going to turn out in the long run. Seven of Wands to Seven of Cups, it was just something that seemed like a great idea, but in the long run it had no true standing to what you truly desire. Even if you're really good at that thing, and knowing you probably are very, very good at that thing, and many people respect you for that. And now you're entering maybe a different arena where you have so much more desire and passion for, but it's not without grieving how much energy you put into something, because that, and I've said this to other signs before, maybe your sign, but even if it's repetitive, it's something that you need to hear, because we do tend to be in repetitive cycles, is that you know that you can put that energy anywhere, right? So you know that you can put it in wherever is coming up for you now, and whatever's needing your attention now, because it's a whole life-changing thing. It's just important that if you try to force anything, even though you know it's coming, if you try to force it, that's where that's the hardest part, where it can be, like you want it to work so bad, but the most important thing is that you create something you create something out of, and you use whatever it is that you're truly passionate about, and you really put all of your different skills into this, your intelligence, your creativity, how much you see and feel and experience in this state of a controlled manner, and then everything changes and people may think you're so controlled or whatever, but truthfully there's something waiting to just burst out of you at any time. And I think it's something that you didn't even know was coming. So you may be able to see the long road and this goal or this dream that you have now, but at the same time that's still going to show you what you're capable of, which is you can see it, but to experience it in the human form is so different than being able to see it and envision it. When it actually happens, it's something that you can tell that Aquariuses are just realizing right there themselves, especially if you're someone who hasn't had that kind of recognition. Even if you have, it's like the president, but not in a bad way, in a positive way. It's like you're the people for the people. Like you'd be like the best president, It's like Saturn and Aquarius is like the best president that we could ever probably have. Yet we still have to understand what and why it's making us go through all of these things. Is weird. I know it sounds like a lot, but you more than anyone know why or what you're going through this for. It's for you. It's for you, because you understand the correlation between you and humanness, and knowing that in Gemini season, you can have many interactions with yourself in a way that can really change your life. And I know this reading doesn't look as great as it is, but it's emphasizing the things that you need to recognize that you're moving through and you have moved through, and how strong you are, especially mentally. Even if you don't feel that way, you are, and it's important to tell yourself that. But just because you feel that doesn't mean you go right when you have the first like adrenaline rush or so much energy one day from coming out of having like not as much. Act in a way that's smart for you. You know, you don't have to go outside and do all these things. Maybe it's like, I needed the shade shut because I was resting before, because I do still have a full-time job at the moment. And so I kept the blinds closed, and for your reading, I was like, no, I'm going to keep them closed even though it's cooling down. It just feels like you're cooling, like as much as you're heating up, you're learning to also cool down in the same fashion. And I think your true nature, like I said to someone who has a certain Gemini placement, Geminis can help you realize your true nature, your raw nature. And that's something that I think this season is so vulnerable and so good for you for. And I think that you're going to have a full experience this month in a way that makes life worth living. All right, Aquarius? The second part will be in a link below, as well as information to work with me one-on-one. I'll see you next month.